Hey guys, how are you? This is Jennifer for the Office 365 Pulse that we have today. And we have one of my favorite people in the world, Mr. Mark Anderson, joining us today. So, Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
No.
Mark, I said to do, no, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, we do know each other rather well, don't we? Well,
We do.
let's see. I'm here because Jennifer and I are buddies, and I'm certainly a guy who uses Office 365 and does sort of different things with it than other people, and building a lot of things client side. So we'll be talking about maybe some of that stuff, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. So we're gonna do quick updates for, what's hit the streets, I guess the streets of Office 365. Quick updates on what's come out in the last 2 weeks, and then we're gonna jump in and talk about some of that client side stuff. So Lyman, can you switch us over to the next layout so we can share my screen? Awesome. Thank you, sir. All right, so I'm going to share my sway. You can also get the sway from the Office 365 Pulse links in the top corner. You should be able to get there and grab the sway if you want to follow along from home, if you want to follow along with the different pieces. So, um, not a ton of updates today. I mean, I think there's some cool things, but in the world of Microsoft, they're kind of cute. Like you might use them and you might not. I think some people will use them and then get mad that they use them because it doesn't match across the client and the web yet. But one of these years we're gonna get there and we're gonna be in sync. Maybe I don't know. But there's some cool stuff, so we can kind of chat through that. The first thing that they had is a fun little app called Send, and this is a chat app for the iPhone where you can chat with your Office 365 contacts and it saves everything inside of your email. So we have a couple of screenshots here. The first one we have is Kathy also has an iPhone. So right now this only works with people who have an iPhone. They can use the app. Everyone else just gets it in email, but this is what the app looks like. So it's kind of got a quick little list there, and the idea is no subjects, no headers, no footers, just a quick little, let me send you a little message, and there we go. But then it puts it inside of your email as well, so you can still see it in the client. So it's got a hashtag send with Kathy and Jennifer, and then it keeps track of the conversations. It doesn't keep it in one big thread. It puts it in like 5 or 6 different threads if you have 5 or 6, different feedback. So it's like just the last one that went to you and the comment there. So that's kind of interesting. So I played with that a little bit. Mark, have you played with this one at all?
I have. I actually used it to send something. Yeah, that was a pun. To somebody I work with who tends to send emails with subject lines and nothing else. So I thought, well, this is
Mm,
perfect for him because this is really more like the way he communicates a lot, and he didn't know what to do with it. So I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play. I think that the weird thing about it is that it does all end up in your inbox. So it's like
yeah.
if you're used to using iOS messaging, having all of that stuff as threads in your email inbox could be sort of good from a governance standpoint, maybe compliance standpoint.
Yeah, because then all of the stuff would be under compliance and everything. I like the concept. Like I like that Microsoft Garage, I guess, is the group that's putting it all together. So they had a collection of little apps from the Microsoft Garage that you could go get and play with, and I thought they were pretty interesting. I didn't like how the app doesn't strip out the signature in the email. So I was going back and forth with Kathy, and Kathy has some icons in her signature for like Twitter and telephones and emails and stuff like that, and it looks horrible on the app. But I
Oh, so
recognize what
coming
it was.
coming coming from
Yeah.
Outlook.
It tried
Got
to
it.
expand it. Yeah, coming from Outlook. So it doesn't strip out that signature if someone responds from Outlook, but I would still get it. But then I did notice with my phone, I was getting I was sitting at my desk doing it, So I have Outlook open on my Surface, and then I had my phone going. So I was getting notifications on my computer, notifications on my phone from Outlook, and notifications from Send. So it was a lot of, that's probably not the
Bing,
use
bing,
case.
bing,
I
bing,
probably
bing.
wouldn't want to do it. Yeah, I was like, enough
It's
already.
this. It's the slot machine of messaging, right? Bing, 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 bing,
Yes,
bing.
yes.
Yeah, I
But I
think
mean,
I
I get
think that, so the other thing that I think that I think that the general reception out there has been a little lukewarm to this. People are sort of, well, how do I use this? I think that the subject line that comes across is also a little weird unless you're used to it, right? So pound send with Kathy. So that then is in your inbox, and how do you know which one of those that was? So we don't
right.
have the subject line in Send, so we don't have one in Outlook. So I'm not sure how all of that sort of rolls together. You could create a rule that sort of shoves it off into a corner or something, but it
Ooh, we
still
could
feels
use
weird.
the new sweep to put it
Right, when we
somewhere.
get to sweep, we could sweep our sends. And the other interesting thing was I noticed that in the blog post on Office Blogs about Send, they invented a whole new phrase for this kind of communication. They called it in and out email. I've never heard that before. It's like it's not texting; it's in and out email.
Hmm.
So yeah, and they tried to define that in the article, and it's still.
It kind of makes me wonder if the people that named it were like sitting at an In-N-Out burger for lunch, and that's where the name came from. That's where they're
That's
like,
right.
it's just like lunch. It's In and Out.
Hey, I'm an In and Out burger. What are you eating?
Yeah, that's totally it. That's how good things get named. I met someone at the Office 10 lunch who I already forget his name, but he was at like one of the Ask the Experts little areas. And I asked him, I was like, well, what's your responsibility, for Windows 10? And we were talking through him, and he's like, well, I was the one who had to come up with the naming of everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, are you the newest on the team? Did you draw the short straw? Like, how did you get that responsibility? I'm so sorry.
Well, it's probably a different person who does the renaming from previous versions of Windows. So they would distribute that responsibility. He only gets to name the new stuff, right?
Oh, I can't even imagine. So funny. Okay, so if you need in and out instead of email or messaging or texting or whatever, I mean, I liked it. I thought for like a big, I think of like the big conferences that I go to, like at Ignite, when I'm trying to talk to like 20 people and I may have their emails, but I don't have all of their phone numbers saved. And, I might want to use a medium like that to, make plans for where everyone's going to dinner, that kind of stuff. But, um, I don't. Maybe I could see it with work people. Texting
I
quick
think
and simple
I think
things.
I definitely see use cases here. I think the question is whether people will grab onto those use cases and find this useful. I think it's possible.
Right. Yeah. And for places that are highly compliant, it may be exactly what they need. So
Yeah.
where they have different things like that. So I thought it was definitely cool. I mean, it was definitely a neat thing. If nothing else, Microsoft is at least pushing out these apps to kind of highlight how their stuff can work and highlight different pieces. So I think I think it's really, really interesting. Um, so that one came out. The overall UI of the app I thought worked really easy. You didn't have to really put any thought into it; it just works. So I was happy to see that. So overall, I think it was okay. Sweet. The next update that we have is basically they came out with the top 10 questions for both the Office for Android and the Office for Mac 2016. And they put together these blog posts that basically tell you, here are the top 10 questions people are asking about these different applications. Do I have to have Office 365? How do I log in? Where do I go? Different things like that. So both of those are there. And then the other thing that I really liked is they're starting to um, really highlight where you can go to give them feedback. So they're giving you the Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. They're giving you those user voices. And so you can go in and put your feedback in the different user voices. So that's a pretty popular, I guess, location to go in. You can go in and you can vote. There's a user voice for almost everything you can think of, every product you can think of, or you can go in and give your feedback. And then based on, I guess, the votes that come in and different things like that, they'll go ahead and add those things to the product sometimes. So, Mark, do you have anything to say about user voice? Are you pro user voice, con user voice? Do you
Well,
use user
I
voice?
think I do. I have quite a few things on the SharePoint user voice. I think it's an interesting mechanism for Microsoft to be listening to the community. We can actually sort of nominate things that we would like to
Yeah.
become features, or things that we consider bugs that we would like fixed. And I've seen over the last, say, 9 months or so that the SharePoint team has been using it. I could have that totally wrong. It might be longer or less time. That a lot of that stuff has been grabbed by the team. It goes under review. Some of it actually rolls into the roadmap. I've actually seen things happen. So that's cool. I think the hardest part about user voice now is finding the right user voice, because all of these teams are setting them up and there's no sort of index to them.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest thing to figure out. Though word.uservoice.com is pretty simple, but
Yeah,
some
definitely.
of the other ones are a little more obscure.
Yeah. And so you can see the different votes that they have. So if you come in, you can vote. You can see what the top suggestions are and stuff like that. So it's a good way for you to see if other people have the same type of ideas that you have. Um,
I think
different things like that.
a great thing for people to do is to just go to these things and scroll down and vote for stuff. You don't have to add your own ideas. If there are things that you spot, oh, I would love that that was there. Add the save button because I'm paranoid. Perfect. I'm paranoid
Mhm.
too. I want to vote that up, because that's what they're listening to. It's not just the post; it's how many votes they get.
Yeah. And then you can also go in and tweet out different suggestions or even like them on Facebook, which that's a big one. So, you could go over here and say, I really want a save button, that I can tweet it out and say, hey, doesn't everybody want a save button? And then all my 7 billion followers, just kidding, I don't have that many, but everybody would go and like it just because I like it. Not really, but I could try to get the word out there and get more votes for it. So, that's a good way to do it, and it kind of quantifies where the feedback can go, so you at least know that you put it there and they do it. But I think they've done a lot of I think they really pay attention right now between Yammer and user voice. It's almost like the features go into Yammer that you want, and a quick little like, here's what we want, and a lot of the conversations happen in Yammer with the product team of them asking more questions and asking for more detail and different things along those lines. So um,
Yeah, it's
I think it's
one thing that sort of amazes me is the amount of bitching and moaning that you see in all of the forums, like the answer forums and stuff. Why isn't anyone from Microsoft listening? This is actually where they're listening. So
yeah,
if you want to make that suggestion, here, I need this fixed, or I want you to add this feature, they will read this. The product teams are
yeah,
reading this. They don't read every post in the answers forums or in the MSDN forums or whatever. They never
right,
have, and everyone always thinks they do, but they don't.
yeah. Yeah. I haven't really spent too much time in the forums anymore since Yammer and user voice and all of that has come out. I mean, I'm sure there's still a huge following in their forum, but I don't spend nearly as much time there.
Now it's funny. The other thing is that some of the Microsoft people who spend a lot of time in Yammer might say, put it in user voice, and then you're sort of like, but you told me to come to Yammer. So we're having a little bit of a, are there too many channels to get this in, and where do we put stuff to be in the right place? I think all of that's a bit of growing pains. It seems to be settling out a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I wish they'd have, I kind of gave them some of this feedback when we were out at Ignite. I wish, them being some people on the SharePoint side of the house, I told them I wish they had scenario specific user voice and not necessarily product specific user voice. Like, I don't want to go tell them what I need to do. Like, I don't want to go complain about something in an InfoPath user voice or a workflow user voice. I want to go talk about, I'm trying to automate X, and I can't, and the pieces are missing. And at the end of the day, I could care less what tool you give to me to actually be able to do it, but I have these different scenarios that I'm trying to do,
Right.
especially around automation and different things like that. And here's a feature that I want to be able to do when I'm trying to automate something. And so I wish there were some more user voices around that type of thing.
That's a great idea. Usecase.uservoice.com or scenario.user. It's something that's not a project team. We have to give them baby steps here, right? I mean, the fact that they've actually gone to user voice is
Yes.
shockingly open, but yeah, that's a great idea. Something that slices across. I mean, it's the same thing we run
Yeah.
into when we're in organizations trying to figure out how to put in SharePoint or something. We start with departments, and then over time we start building but what are people actually doing as opposed to where do they
Right.
want to go to get it, right?
Exactly.
Same idea.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So that's all
great
interesting
idea.
stuff. So that is our user voice updates. So you guys can go check those out. Check out the FAQs. I looked through the FAQs. There wasn't anything that was just dying with awesomeness. So I thought we needed to talk about it. It was just basically like, hey, these have rolled out. I feel like they've gotten really good at saying, hey, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and hey, it's here in beta, it's here in beta. And then when it finally comes out, it's like, this almost feels like old news because they're getting pretty good at getting those cycles out, especially with the Office products and stuff like that. So, all exciting things. The next piece that came is that Azure Rights Management is now on the Office for iPad and the iPhone. So if you're working in one of these compliant environments, you have Azure Management Rights turned on and configured, you're now going to be able to get your content securely on those devices. So that is all really cool stuff. What I loved about this article is at the end of the article, they actually gave the roadmap for the rest of the Azure Rights. Well, I don't know if it's all of it, but for a huge percentage of the rest of the Azure Rights stuff, Azure Rights Management stuff. So, like Office Mobile will support Azure Rights Management with Windows 10 Enterprise release in the fourth quarter of 2015. So, they put some quantifiable dates around times that other things are coming for Azure Rights Management. Um, so Office for Android is going to support Azure Rights Management in the fourth quarter of 2015. So the fourth quarter of 2015, right around the corner. So we're not that far away from it at all. So it was interesting to see, like, they kind of said, hey, here's what's here today with the iPhone and iPad, and here's what's coming with the other platforms that are there. Do you have much experience, Mark, with Azure Rights Management on different files and doing it across different platforms?
I don't, and to me, this is one of those things that ought to just work, and I don't want to think about it because it's not where I play. It
Right.
sounds like a good thing. I don't know really what it does, but it sounds good. It's got a nice blue logo. That's about as far
Ah,
as I go.
well, so it's we're returning rights management on documents. And right now, if I try to access a secured document or something like that that's got the rights applied to it from my iPhone, I'm not even going to be able to open the document. It's not going to be available to me. Now it's going to be available to me, and I can only open it and edit. Or, like, I can't print it, but I can open it. Or I can, edit it, but I can't. Like, all those different rights that you can apply to it, I can now get that document on the other devices. Whereas before, I could only get it if I was at the browser. So it's just one of those updates. So
It's interesting because I haven't noticed any barriers to me getting stuff, but in my organization of two people, we don't have barriers. We just don't need them.
right,
But
right.
I'm not connected. While I have several other tenants connected on iOS, I haven't had any problems getting at things I need. So probably this stuff hasn't been in the way.
Right, and I'm the same way. There's not a whole lot that I've tried to get to that has been rights protected. So I think it's probably more of an industry specific announcement, and I'm guessing that most of the industries that have a need to do that probably aren't going to be doing a lot with Azure Rights Management until the tools match, what they need to do. So I think it's probably one of those, catches and fixes. But it sounds like by the end of 2015, a lot of the apps are going to be running and a lot of the platforms are going to be running at that same level. So we might start to see more of it.
Yeah, I think what this will do, without all kidding aside, is it's going to remove another barrier that's been there for some industries to get to Office 365.
Yep.
It's a it's a compliance checkbox that is really important to the people it's important to, and they're not going to go to
Exactly.
Office 365 until it's there.
Yeah. Agreed. So that was really cool. So I thought that was there. The next piece that we have is woo, Windows 10 is here and it's awesome. Ooh, Lyman, you can bring my poll over now. So I wanted to poll the audience and see what they felt about Windows 10. Do they already have it installed? Are you waiting for your turn to install it? Do you care? Or I'm only doing it when they make me. So I'm kind of curious to see what people are thinking on this one. So a lot of people already have it installed, but I installed it yesterday. The install went incredibly smooth. Well, let's not lie. I had a I worked at a company before that doesn't necessarily have a BYOD policy, but they'd kind of let you bring in your own devices, but you had to agree to install like their, security stuff and so I had virus protection on there that I couldn't uninstall. So I called the help desk and they're like, awesome, you don't work here anymore. We're not going to help you uninstall it. So we had to hack my machine to get that uninstalled. So we, did what every person does when they can't find stuff. To get it off their machine, you go Google it and you find a script that somebody else, I guess we Bing it. We went and looked, we found a script of what we needed to do. So we hacked up my machine, got that removed. And once I removed that, I went through the install process. But even with that on there, when I went through the install process, it said, hey, you have this application installed. And because it's installed, we can install this. So you need to go change these settings in the application or uninstall it to go to the next level. And so it's just very user friendly. And then I went through the process of doing the install. I went downstairs, hung out for about a half hour or so, came back up to my computer, and it was, welcome back, Jennifer. And I logged right in and kicked up as normal. I had a few issues with every time I opened Office for the first day. I had to reactivate my software. So that was a little bit annoying because it takes like 3 or 4 clicks to do it. But other than that, that's really, so I've kind of new at Windows 10. I know people have been using it for a lot longer than me, but I wasn't going to go until I was sure it would be really not annoying. So that's what I got. Mark, you were showing me you've got that special Mark Anderson's
Yeah,
personal GUID.
yeah, I've got some interesting UI widgets that aren't either supposed to be there. I think I'm the only one who has them. My experience, I joined the Windows Insiders thing probably 2 months ago, and I think it's gone from you needing a PhD in putting up with crap to maybe a master's in putting up with crap even after the release. So, I'm still struggling with some of the stuff that doesn't work on my machine. It definitely doesn't pass the mom test. So if you're not somebody who wants to spend some time figuring out what driver doesn't work and why is Hyper-V not sharing the network card, and these are real things that I've had problems with, then I would suggest that waiting for a month or two. There's supposed to be a service release out any minute. I mean, I think the word on the street is that it could be like this week or next week to put in all the fixes that they couldn't get into the release, which is a little scary. But the Service Pack 1 coming out a week after the release of it, I think that is why is my mom using Hyper-V? Hey, watch it, buddy.
We're not allowed to talk about Mark's mom on Sway. Come on.
She's not, but when the install starts talking to you about things like drivers, she's not. She's going to throw the computer away. So,
you guys did miss an exciting. Yeah, you guys did miss an exciting blooper reel if we had been recording it, where both Mark and I were testing the voice activation of Cortana in Windows 10. So we were, hey, Cortana, can you do this? And it was kind of funny. So you guys did miss that. So we spent a little bit of time. Sometimes I think if people could just watch us, they'd be like, y'all are idiots. Like, because it was really funny. So we spent a little time talking to Cortana.
How do you know they're not saying that right now?
That's true. They could be. They could be. but they haven't left yet. So I don't know. It was funny. So we got Cortana to tell us some jokes. I've been able to tell Cortana to open Word for me. So, if I ever really can't hit the start Word button, I can be like, hey, Cortana, open Word. Um, it's just great. So, my own personal
We were
assistant.
also
Oh,
we were
Cortana thinks
also
that.
oh see we were also talking about how lovely Jennifer and I both work from home primarily, and how lovely it must be in a very large office full of cubes where everyone's
Yes.
starting to talk to Cortana. The "Hey Cortanas" that you're going to hear over all the cube walls is going to drive you bananas. At least it would drive me bananas.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
going to be a no Cortana policy in some offices, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. And I like how you can train Cortana to know your voice so that, like, if Corey comes up to my machine and says, hey, Cortana doesn't know him. So, I mean, it's just, I don't know. So it was fun. I mean, the demos always crack me up, like when they do the demos of, hey, Cortana, show me, the sales over this month over last month. And some big BI chart comes up, and I'm like, who's actually going to, like, do that? But maybe it's going to change the world when we all have, HoloLens and Cortana and, you know, whatever. uh, so it's fun. But
There actually was news about Windows 10 in Office 365 there.
yeah, they
It
had
doesn't
some.
have to do with Cortana being weird.
No, no, it just had to do with us. Where we're going. Our show. We can talk about what we want. Um, I think it's all about authentication, right? So I guess Windows 10 just makes the single sign on and the authentication a much easier experience. And that was really kind of the gist of what I've got. There's an Office Mechanics show where Jeremy kind of walks through what's new for Office 365 admins. Um, I'm guessing that that's not going to be relevant for a while yet. I mean, I know Microsoft is wanting everybody to be up on the latest and greatest, but I don't see organizations just running out and putting on as much as Microsoft wants them to. I don't see them running out and putting on Windows 10 already, but maybe I could be wrong. Um, I
I
don't
think we'll
know.
see
I
the
think
normal 5 to 6 year ramp up that we're used to seeing from early adopters to the
I don't know that we'll
laggards,
see
and
a
their
five to
laggards usually.
six year wrap. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know.
I still run into Windows XP, and I think the stats are actually off. I think there's more Windows XP out there than the stats prove.
Oh, I see Windows XP everywhere. You just have to go to the airport,
Yep.
look around, go to any restaurant, look around. Like it's
Yep.
all over the place. Um,
Everywhere, and they're not on public networks, so it's hard to tell that they're there. But inside organizations, you still see a lot of lagging. So I think 5 or 6 or 8 years is not going to be too ridiculous to think that it's going to take that long for Windows 10 to get out there pervasively.
yeah,
But there will be a lot of companies going faster, and I think one of the reasons that they may want to do it is because of some of the hooks into Office 365. I mean,
yeah,
Microsoft's not dumb about this stuff. The way they can distribute apps into their organizations through the company store versus the Office store. I
yeah,
don't exactly know how that works, but I know it's there. So there are going to be, I think that Microsoft is actually showing some compelling reasons as opposed to the old, but it's new.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's new doesn't cut it, right? I mean, it's a huge expense to make that kind of a change. So we're
yeah,
seeing some pretty compelling reasons to do it.
yeah. And I think it lays the framework for quicker updates, right? Like so, this is really the first batch of real applications that feel are getting hit after the growth of Office 365. So I know how they're learning to deploy Office 365 and how they're constantly doing that kind of stuff that works well and how they're doing it and the constant updates and stuff like that. It's going to filter across all of Microsoft. And so you've even seen, Windows updates are going to be coming much faster and it's going to be different. And I think that we'll see like this being the last huge lag that they have. So when people make this update, they're kind of committing to this new paradigm of how things are going. So I think it will happen and that change will come. But I think you're right. There's some organizations that are going to be slow as molasses and others that are going to jump in. So I think it's different, and there's a lot of things to still think about and to do. But I think we'll see it. We'll see it be successful. Awesome. So there's a video there. Should you want to watch it, Jeremy Chapman kind of walks through his series is really good. Do you pay much attention to the office mechanic stuff that comes out? He usually does like a 10-minute clip a week with different topics, and they're usually pretty interesting. So definitely worth checking those out.
I don't know how people make the time to watch all these videos. I try to get my information in tweet-sized bites because I can't sit there and watch an hour-long video. I got too much work to do.
They can come to this show and find out what videos they think they should watch based on what we talk about. There you go.
Exactly. See that's the way I use Twitter for my RSS feed to tell me that a video is actually worth watching. Because if enough people tweet about it, then there must be a point. Because otherwise, I don't know how you all do it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see. This one is kind of
fun stuff.
Yeah, this is the fun one. This one kind of slipped in yesterday, and I was like, hey, this is pretty neat. So they're making changes to Outlook Web, which I love, but they're not on the client side. So that kind of bums me out because if you're working in the web and you're working in the client, I work in both. I don't work in one exclusively of the other. It just literally depends on where I'm at and what I'm doing. But we can walk through and show some of these. We've got pinning, sweeping, charms, email reminders. All sounds like really fun, fluffy words. But we can go look at it. So the new things that come up in email now is we have this action bar across the top that lets us just quickly, it's less than the ribbon, but has the same types of things that you would find in the ribbon. But it's got this concept of sweeping, which you kind of said it best, Mark, that sweeping is just like the new interface for rules. So the concept is, hey, delete all messages and any future messages, always keep the latest and delete the rest. Think of it as a way to like clean up your ongoing subscriptions and junk mails and different things like that. That's kind of how they describe it, as a quick and easy way to kind of deal with all of that extra mail that we always get. So the sweep feature is kind of cool. Creates rules on the background. I'm pretty sure if I even click here for rules, it's just going to take me to the rules interface. Yeah. So nothing.
I think it's a nicer interface over the existing rules engine would be my guess. Sort of the one-click version of what we've probably a lot of us been doing for years and years. But it's a smarter way to do it.
Yeah, easier for people. So maybe your mom could understand sweeping versus rules.
It's perfect for people like my mom, or people who are even more tech savvy than my mom, who just want a simpler way to come up with these rules.
Exactly. Another one that they have that I think is pretty slick is this concept of pinning a message. And what this lets you do is it lets you go down and say, oh, yeah, this message is awesome. I need to pin it. And it basically puts it at the top of your email. So all of your pinned messages show up at the top. So if you've got a thread that you're really following or something that you're always searching and looking for, you can pin it to the top of your inbox, and then it's always there for easy access. So I kind of love this feature, but what I hate about this feature is that I'm going to pin something in the silly web, and then I'm going to go look at my client, and I'm going to need that stupid email, and I'm not going to be able to find it anywhere, and then I'm going to get mad and never pin anything again. At least that's how I would respond.
Not that this has ever happened or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an Outlook. We're not going to call it OWA anymore because it got renamed yesterday. Outlook on the web. I don't use Outlook on the web. I'm an Outlook client person because I tend to be on my laptop and moving around, and maybe I'm online, maybe I'm not. I'm used to it. So it's a little frustrating to see some of this new stuff showing up on the web version. It makes sense that it's getting there first, but I'm hoping that the Outlook 2016 desktop client starts to see the same kinds of updates that Windows 10 has,
Yeah.
where there's something that seems to be working pretty well on the web version. Let's push it down into the desktop client. I don't know how that's going to work in large enterprises, so we'll see where Microsoft goes like with that stuff. But I could see Sweep being a nice little button to have. I would love to have that junk button a lot more handy than junk is now, because you can't turn junk off,
Right.
really. When it's off, it's not off, and so stuff is always landing in junk that I have to go and fish out. So having those things a little handier on that toolbar is sort of nice, even though we have a ribbon.
Yeah, and I'm hoping. I mean, just like you said, I think that's the direction that they said, and even Dan saying in the chat that it's the direction that they said they're going at Ignite. That these updates should hit from the web and then going to the client. And I'm hoping that we start to see that quickly happen, because what I see here is they're going to get this awesome feature, and then their telemetry is going to tell them that no one liked the feature, but maybe no one liked the feature because it wasn't consistent across all of the apps, so people stopped using it, versus it's really a useful feature, put it in both. And so I think it depends. I really do like the web interface, though. I've used it a little bit more, so I've really enjoyed going. The company that I was at was using everything on-prem, and for security reasons, they weren't embracing the cloud. They hadn't gone to it, no big deal, for their own internal stuff, and for good reasons that I supported. But the new company that I'm working at, we're fully Office 365, and it has been really refreshing to be able to go in and see. I actually use Delve quite a bit, to see, as I'm trying to learn what other people are working on and different things like that. It's a great way to source up that information. And then as well, like the web tools for Outlook Web, I've been able to really get in, and I've used it more than I thought I would, because it's a better experience than what I've been in the past, but I still kind of default to that client piece. I still haven't gone a day where I haven't opened Outlook at all, and maybe I need to try that, but that just seems, I don't know, maybe I'll try that on a slow day. Um, but
whenever one of those happens.
yeah, yeah. But then we also got some features that I think are kind of fluffy, and just kind of like, okay. So now for meetings, I can go to a meeting and I can give it a charm. Um, so like I can put a dog or a cat or a pill. I guess that could be I'm taking my dog to the vet. It's bring your dog to work day. I don't know. I could put balloons for a party, and then it shows up as the icon there. And so the idea is that I can quickly visually see if I pick what these charms are. I can know what the meeting is. So, I don't know that I would use that often, um, but I could. I don't know. So those are the little charms that are there. And then the last update that we have, and this one I think is actually really cool. If I go into the meeting, now when I set up the meeting, um, there's this reminder button. So I can say, send an email reminder 15 minutes before, 30 minutes before, 2 days, 3 days. I can do a custom time. And then I can say, is the reminder just going to me or all attendees? But then I can put in what the specific reminder message is. And so I can use this to prep and remind people about what the meetings are. And I actually think this is a pretty valuable tool. If you want to remind people, especially if you're sending out a meeting weeks in advance or something like that, you can ping people a couple of days before and remind them what they're supposed to do, or ping them the morning of and, remember when we go out tonight, don't bring your kids, or, whatever it is you want to send. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Eric asked us,
sorry, go ahead.
uh, Eric asked if we could tell Cortana to create those reminders, and I actually think that's the vision of where all of that is going once the Cortana and Office 365 stuff are all synced up, because you can tell her now to like send off emails and do different things like that. So I think in the future we could talk to Cortana and have her do all of this. I guess she is our personal assistant. Mark's like, no.
No, no, I can't. I don't understand Cortana. I can't talk to my computer. Doesn't make sense to me. I do think that the calendaring has always been a very confusing thing in Outlook. I think I would say 90% of us don't really understand how we're supposed to use it. there are a lot of things you can do up on the ribbon that we don't get or that
Yeah.
we just don't use right. When we get an invitation, most of us know that we're supposed to accept it. I know lots of people who don't. Um, I think that understanding that when you reply to an invitation, it goes out as a different version of that invitation and things like that. So I think adding these little widgetlets or whatever we want to call them into calendar items is a great idea because the metaphor has been too complicated in the past in Outlook, I think, and
Yeah.
that to me is a nice simplification. You don't have to remember who's invited to the meeting. You don't have to understand a lot of other things about what's going on under the hood. You just say, I want this reminder to go out ahead of time, and I wanted to say this particular thing. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think it makes it helpful. And then I wonder if we view it in a different view, yeah, the charms show up with the meeting. So I guess it's supposed to give you a visual cue other than colors. Um, what's there. So I mean, people could do that. I think you could come up with what different cues were and different things like that. So why not? People love icons. So charms, why not? Why not have charms? I think it's great. But those rolled out to first release. The email went out yesterday, or the blog post went out yesterday saying it was on first release. It wasn't in my tenant when I last checked around 5 o'clock last night. I came in this morning and checked, and it had showed up in my tenant. So I don't know how
So
quickly
I'm,
it's
I'm sort of I'm sort of halfway there. It's in my tenant, but I don't like. For instance, when I add the charm, I can do it, but I don't see it. So maybe actually, you know what that is? Only in the so they don't show up in the month view. They do show up in the week view.
yeah, they
Um,
showed up in the
so
month view like
it
on the
takes a
right
little getting
pane.
used to, I think.
Yeah, who knows? Um, Yeah, cool. So those are kind of those updates, all interesting things. That's really all the updates that they had on the blog post in the last week. Not anything too crazy, not too much, but being the fiscal year and the changes and stuff like that, I imagine it's going to be slow for a couple of weeks for summer while everyone's enjoying it. They did post two more case studies that were there. So UL and Adventist Health Systems are pretty cool. Interesting to see if you're using stuff with HIPAA and different things like that. You might want to check that one out. UL's got some thoughts about how they pushed Office 365 Pro Plus. They basically did an inventory of their systems, and they put order of install was based on you having the oldest versions of Office. So if you were running Office 2007, you were first in line. Um, you were first in line to get the upgrade to Office Pro Plus. And then otherwise, when they started to run into issues, they did side-by-side installations, and they didn't really run into any issues until they got to the people that were running newer versions of Office. And then there was some conflicts and some issues, and they had to do the side-by-side. So, I mean, interesting case studies just to see, how other people are doing it and what's come out of it. So those were two more interesting case studies to pop into. So if anybody has any questions about, anything that we talked about, you guys can put that into the chat window. And if not, we're going to just bump into the hanging out with Mark part of the show. So it's so fun to hang out
Let's
with
hang
Mark. I
out.
love
Hey.
it. I love it. So, Mark, you're one of my favorite people. But it's funny because I tell
I, you,
people that
you know, I hear you say that to other people when you don't know I'm around.
I kind of say it to everybody. I have a lot of
I know that.
favorites. You're not supposed to call me out on it. No, I kind of do say it to everybody, but you're one of my favorites. Um, it's kind of like when I start talking about SharePoint, I'm like, this is my favorite feature. And then 5 minutes later, this is my favorite feature. It's just, oh, I'm sorry. But you're still one of my favorites. What I love about you is that I talk about how I'm allergic to semicolons and syntax, and I'm not going to do anything that I can't do out of the box. And you're like that next level of me because you embrace the syntax and the semicolons, and you do all sorts of really cool, fun stuff. And so I know that in talking to a lot of the audience that I talk to and different things like that, there's a big percentage of them that once they start to master what SharePoint can do out of the box, as much as anyone can, because we're all constantly learning and it's changing and different things like that. But once they feel comfortable with it and they're trying to do these things, they often look at it and say, dang it, I just need it to do this and it just can't do that. And deploy a technique that allows you to kind of take it to that next level. So I thought it would be super cool to have you um, on the show and just kind of talk through what is that scenario like, and then talk through if somebody who's like me, that's only doing things out of the box and different things like that, how could they transition into doing more? And I thought we could just have a fun little, informal conversation about that type of scenario and working with those pieces.
Right. Well, it's as you were talking, I was thinking it's sort of like development in sheep's clothing, right? I mean, it's real developers, real big air quotes. I'll do it in triple air quotes. Real developers think of what I do as being, sort of baby programming, but that's changed a lot. So I know that I got to stop grousing about it. But I think I wrote a manifesto years ago, the middle tier manifesto, where the idea was that there's a huge space
Mm-hmm.
between what you do with no periods and semicolons, the configuration or just sort of what you do through the UI, and what you do as a real SharePoint developer. And
Right.
I know that there's a huge, huge community out there of citizen developers, non-professional developers, people in marketing who like to code. There are a lot of different phrases for it. Some of these people do really good stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
they actually make the difference between no SharePoint adoption and SharePoint adoption, because they make it do the things that the
Yeah.
organization actually needs, and they make it palatable, because as we know, the SharePoint UX is not always wonderful. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in that space, and I think that now that there's a lot more sort of acceptance that JavaScript is a real language, we're seeing more professional developers, or whatever we want to call them, spending time there too.
Yeah. It's a fun conversation when you get I and my some of my favorite sessions are, and you've helped me do some of these, where we pull all spectrums together. We did this I think at SP TechCon, and we pulled that, the person that's allergic to semicolons and syntax, which was me. We pulled yourself and Wes Preston, and then we pulled in people like Andrew Connell, who is a, again, three air quotes, professional SharePoint developer, and we talked about how would we solve this business problem, and we all had different perspectives that kind of melded together and met in the middle. So there's definitely a
Right.
place for all of it, and it's very interesting stuff. I think the one thing I always hear is that the person that sits in that middle tier can do more damage than good. And so that's true of whoever you are, wherever you sit in any spectrum. But I would ask, what is if somebody was wanting to take on that role and do some of those different things, what advice would you give them to kind of get them started and to keep themselves from doing, you know, the one thing that they're not supposed to do, or different things like that?
I I actually think that there's very little that you can do that's damaging that you can't do through the UI, because you can call web services and stuff, but they don't let you do anything that you can't do that's stupid through the UI. Want to delete a list and have it be gone, it'll be in the recycling bin, but still,
Mm-hmm.
it's not any more likely. But I think there are a couple things that I recommend to anybody who will listen to me talk about it. One is try to do this stuff in partnership with IT. A lot of the reasons people do this kind of work is that when they go to IT, the answer is just an emphatic no. It's
Yeah.
not a, talk to us next year when we have budget. Even it's just no. We can't do that for you. We won't do that for you. It's just an unpleasant answer. Even given that, I think doing things in partnership with IT makes it more likely that this way of working will become a new norm, as opposed to this sort of
Right.
us versus them antagonistic thing. And then from the IT side, I think I've written about this a bunch. Try and think of offering um, like JavaScript functions as a service. So making these functions available, things like what's in SP services, the cascading dropdowns, for instance, that's always a great example. Make that available to the end users so that they can add it to their own forms and stuff. And that way, IT is meeting people in the middle as opposed to being the no the source of the no answer, which is
Right.
not really a good place to be. A lot of the work that I do in that space came from having to interact with those IT departments. By the way, I've been in IT departments. I've been on both sides of this fence, so I know what it's like. Um,
Right. And now you just get to be a consultant and point at both of them. It's both of their faults.
Actually, I'm one of those rare consultants who says it's probably my fault. Let me see if I can fix it for you. But I think everything as I've gotten older, which only continues to happen, I've realized that most things are on a spectrum. They're not black
Right.
and white. We don't have users and developers. We have people all along that spectrum in the middle,
Yeah.
and everybody needs to be able to play where they need to play and get along. Quote Rodney King, why can't we all just get along?
I don't
But
think
that's
exactly.
actually it is that important though, because I
Yeah.
think we're working with SharePoint or Office 365 in the larger scope, which is about collaboration, and we need to collaborate. It's the more modern way of working. All of these new things that they're putting into Office 365 are about people working together in non-traditional ways, and we
Right.
want to try and support that on the development side as well.
Cool. Well, what is your most favorite solution or thing you have built or developed in the past year?
I do so many fun things. I love what I do. I really do.
Well, you
I
can
don't
tell
think
us
there's
more than
been. Yeah, I can tell you what some of them are. I mean, they're all interesting to me. One thing I did really recently was on SharePoint 2010. I wrote a page layout that could support up to 3 languages without writing 2 different pages. So, the French and the Spanish and the English are all in the same page. You click a link and it changes the language for you right in the page.
that. Oh,
So
cool.
it becomes a truly multilingual page without getting into variations. Or again, I'm doing it a different way because I find some of the real ways to be a little more cumbersome. But that was just adding some JavaScript um, to a page layout, and then it works for every page that you use it. That was pretty cool.
That's
Yeah, I thought that was a fun, non-traditional solution. Let's see what else. I've been working on some. For some reason we've got a bunch of clients now that are in the sort of scientific health care sort of that realm. So a lot of
cool.
things trying to support people recording um, the output of their experiments and manage the
Okay.
progress of that workload. So coming up with, in a lot of ways, what comes down to sort of a skin or a veneer on top of Office 365 or SharePoint 2013 that reflects their business process using Knockout, things like Knockout or Angular or whatever. And I say whatever because it doesn't really matter. You can use any of these, so that there's a very interactive canvas where it's a single page application kind of feel, though you may pop up things like list forms or send them off
Right.
to other places for some things, but it becomes just a framing of how SharePoint works for them to see their business process. Sometimes it's got graphics and icons and stuff that they click on, or one of the things we're doing is going to have, it's almost like we used to use chevrons a lot in management consulting to show a process. So,
Yeah.
when you're at process step 3, you click on that chevron and you see what's going on in that process stuff. So again, it's all lists and libraries underneath, but it's giving it a nice sort of facade that is much more familiar to them based on what their business is. A bunch of those going
So,
on. Those are fun.
how do you, when you work with customers to define that and to kind of build it out, what's the process like? Do you gather requirements just on what it needs to do technically, and then do you go back and show them mock-ups, or do you just build it and then go back to them, or do you guys agree on this button goes here and all of that before you go out and build it and then you go build it? It might be different per customer based on how they
It,
work, but it would
it,
be interesting to hear.
well, the biggest variable there is how much they actually understand their own process, because
Right.
believe it or not, a lot of business people don't
Yeah.
understand what their process really is if you try to just have them describe it. And I don't mean that as a diss. I mean, they've just never had to think about it in that term, in
Right.
those terms. They just say, "What I do this, I think. No, wait, I do that other thing." And then, well, sometimes, you know how it
Yeah.
goes. It's like defining a workflow. So, in any case, yes, that sort of what they walk in with is on a spectrum. But I find the best way to do it, and SharePoint is awesome for this, is just rapid iteration and prototyping. We put stuff on a screen. We say, does this sort of reflect that thing we just
Got it.
talked about?
Yeah.
Is this the color blue you meant? Where can we? We thought we were going to put the calendar over here, but it doesn't fit well over there. So let's slide it over here. I think the days of having written requirements where you do a fixed bid on them ought to just be in the rearview mirror. I think we ought to be working.
Yeah.
I think of it as I've used the phrase before, collaborative development, right? Where we
Yeah.
sit with the people who are using it, or as close as we can, and just cycle, 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 and they end up in a totally different place than they thought they were going to end up. And it's
Right.
usually a much better place than they
Oh
would have
yeah.
thought.
And what I love about that is it's the concept of as people are consuming software differently, people are consuming it as a service now across everything in their lives. They expect to consume services differently as well. And so as they're,
Mm-hmm.
expecting updates and expecting pieces and rapid and fast. And so I think that's what they're expecting. So I agree with you. We're still going to see their traditional statements of work for a while, but I think there's a hunger out there for people to consume things differently than the way they always have been, which is refreshing because I think you get better end results, much better
I
end results.
absolutely agree, and I think the 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 knowledge level of end users is much higher in the sense
Yeah.
that they're using all of these services, and they can say, could you make it look like this thing in Facebook, or that thing on QuickBooks, or this other thing
Yeah.
that I see in Yammer? So I've never had anyone ask me that. Oh, that was a joke. Um, they can sort of pick and choose visual metaphors or functional metaphors that we see
Yeah.
in other services, and then we can sort of glue those ideas together and come up with something that has a user interface that makes sense to them. And that, I think, is what's missing from a lot of traditional development. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been on both sides of any fence you want to, all the side. I've been everywhere, including on top of the fence, in all of this. I've written COBOL and all this stuff. So, I think that we've got to ride this tide that's evolving the way development actually works. And you're seeing people who have been a bit more dyed in the wool about requirements and things like that changing, and it's not necessarily a comfortable change, but it's a good one.
Yeah. That's very cool. Well, we are just about out of time. So the final question that I'm going to ask you, I think this is the Jen's question of the month. It's the question that I keep asking all of my guests. So, and that is, if you could do one thing over in your career, what would it be?
I read these questions ahead of time. I should have had an answer, huh? This is sort of an odd answer, but I think get to the. I don't know how I would have done it, but get to the point of having confidence younger.
That's
And
a great answer.
I don't know exactly how I could have done that, but I think that it took me into my late 40s to realize that, wait a minute, I know how to do some stuff, and I should have some confidence around that. Not false confidence, not the I haven't paid
Not
my dues
arrogance.
and
Yeah.
spent my whatever 10,000 hours or whatever the right number is, but you know just realize the things that you're good at and realize the things that you're not. And for me, it was realizing the things that you are good at. I felt that I was not good at everything, so that was easy. But understanding the difference between those two, I think that makes you a much better contributor to anything that you do. certainly makes you a better developer. Know when you don't understand how to do something and how to ask for help. That's a huge vulnerability to
Yeah.
expose. That's important.
That's such a that's a great answer, Mark. I love it. I need to keep a record of all of my guests and get their questions and get this questionnaire because this is a fun one to ask. I've asked Kathy and Tom Duff so far have been the others that I queried. I at least gave you the questions beforehand, though. I pulled poor Kathy
I
off the
didn't.
spot. Yeah.
I didn't read it.
Well, then that's your fault, not mine.
Right. Well,
Oh, that's
if I thought about it ahead of time, it would have been a different answer. I can guarantee you.
well, that's good. I like to put you on the spot. That's some great insight, and it's so true, so true. Um, well, we are kind of wrapping up at the end of the hour today, so I know we've got. I think Lyman was going to change the layout. The next show that we have, we've got both Kathy Dew and Lori Gowan are going to be joining us. We'll go through all of the updates that have been, hitting Office 365, all of the unknowns. We'll see what we get in the next 2 weeks. And then we're also going to talk about some women in technology stuff. There's been some really cool stuff out lately, like the Look Like an Engineer and different things like that have been hitting. So we're going to kind of do just some chatting around that and talk about some of the women in tech stuff that's on IT Unity. So that is what it's going to be on our next show. So as always, we look forward to having you guys join us. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat room, and we shall see you guys in just a few weeks. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Bye, everybody.